The room went quiet the moment she spoke. A billionaire who owned half of Chicago's skyline sat frozen in his wheelchair, staring at a 10-year-old black girl who didn't beg, didn't smile, didn't lower her eyes. Her clothes were worn but clean. Her back was straight. Her voice didn't shake. "Give me your leftovers," she said, "and I'll teach you how to walk." People laughed. Someone whispered that she was bold. Someone else muttered that she didn't belong there. Jonathan Hale laughed too, dry, bitter, defensive, because in that second it was easier to mock a child than to face the truth crushing his chest. He was powerful, rich, admired, and completely broken. What no one in that restaurant understood was this. Those words weren't a joke. They were a challenge. A line drawn between pride and survival, between prejudice and listening. And if you stay, you'll see how 2 minutes with that child shattered everything he thought he knew about power, dignity, and who really gets to stand. The first thing Jonathan Hale noticed wasn't the pain in his legs. It was the silence. 6 months earlier, his world had been noise. Boardrooms humming with ambition, private jets roaring into the sky, voices competing for his attention. Now the quiet pressed against him like a weight. He sat in his wheelchair by the wide window of Riverside Bistro in downtown Chicago, watching people walk past on the Riverwalk. They moved without thinking. Steps, balance, freedom. Things his body no longer obeyed. Doctors called it complete paralysis below the waist. Clean words for a brutal truth. Jonathan Hale had built one of the most powerful tech companies in the country. He was used to fixing problems. Money fixed things. Influence fixed things. If something broke, he replaced it. But no amount of money had convinced his spine to respond. No surgeon, no experimental therapy, no whispered miracle overseas. The world hadn't just taken his legs, it had taken his certainty. At the table behind him, a man laughed too loudly. At the table to his left, a couple avoided eye contact with him, their glances flicking briefly to the wheelchair and away again. Pity made people uncomfortable. Jonathan knew that look well now. He reached for his fork, appetite gone, when a shadow crossed the table. He looked up and froze. The girl couldn't have been more than 10. Slim, dark skin glowing softly against a pale yellow hoodie that looked washed too many times but carefully kept clean. Her sneakers were worn, but tied neatly. She stood straight, shoulders back, eyes steady. Not shy, not apologetic. She pointed at his plate. "Give me your leftovers," she said. Her voice was calm, not pleading, not playful. Jonathan blinked, certain he had misheard. "I'll teach you how to walk." For a second, his brain stalled, like a computer stuck between commands. Then a dry laugh escaped his throat. It wasn't amusement. It was reflex, armor. That's when he noticed the shift around them. The waiter stiffened. A woman at the next table sucked in her breath. Someone muttered, "Where's her mother?" under their breath. A man near the bar frowned, already irritated. A black child, speaking that boldly in a white upscale space, made people nervous. Jonathan saw it all. He'd spent his life reading rooms. "Kid," he said, forcing a smile, "that's not funny." "I'm not joking," the girl replied. Her eyes didn't flicker. No grin, no giggle, just certainty. Jonathan reached into his jacket, pulled out a few bills, and placed them on the table without counting. "Take this," he said. "Go buy something warm." Her gaze dropped to the money and hardened. "I didn't ask for money," she said quietly. "I asked for your leftovers." A pause, heavy, awkward. Mark Ellison, Jonathan's longtime executive assistant, leaned in from behind the wheelchair. "Sir, do you want me to handle this?" His voice was polite, tight. Jonathan lifted a hand. "No." He studied the girl again, really looked at her this time. Not as a disruption, not as a charity case, as a person. "What's your name?" he asked. "Naomi Brooks." "And you think you can make me walk?" "Yes." There was something unsettling about how easily she said it. Not arrogance, conviction. Jonathan exhaled sharply. "You're 10. That doesn't change the truth." A couple at the bar snorted. Someone whispered, "Unbelievable." The manager hovered near the host stand, torn between calling security and pretending this wasn't happening. Jonathan felt heat rise in his chest, not anger at Naomi, but at the room, at how quickly people decided who belonged and who didn't. He'd been one of those people once. "You know how many doctors promised me that?" he asked, voice low. "Hundreds. They had degrees, machines, data." Naomi nodded. "They were trying to fix your body. And you're not. I'm trying to wake it up." Silence stretched. Jonathan stared at his plate. Half a steak, cold vegetables, food he no longer wanted. This was absurd, reckless, embarrassing, and yet something inside him shifted. Not hope, not belief, curiosity. "What do you want the leftovers for?" he asked. She hesitated just a fraction of a second. "Animals, strays, they don't get to choose either." Jonathan felt something crack, not open, just fracture. Slowly, deliberately, he pushed the plate toward her. "All right," he said. "Deal." Naomi nodded once. No smile, no celebration. She pulled a small plastic bag from her pocket and carefully scraped the food into it, hands steady, movements respectful, like a ritual. Mark stared. "Sir?" "Cancel my meetings tomorrow," Jonathan said. Mark's mouth opened, closed. "All of them?" "Yes." Naomi looked up. "We'll need privacy." "We?" Jonathan echoed. "You and me." The drive to Hale Estate passed in silence. Naomi sat in the back seat, the bag of food resting on her knees like something precious. Daniel Moore, Jonathan's security chief, glanced at her in the mirror more than once. Confusion etched across his face. When they arrived, Naomi didn't gape at the manicured lawns or the towering stone columns. She walked like she'd been there before, like places didn't impress her. "First rule," she said once they were inside, "you give the food to me, yourself." Jonathan frowned. "Why does that matter?" "Because it's not charity if you don't feel it." He handed her the bag. She nodded. "Good." 20 minutes later, Naomi returned empty-handed. "Now," she said, "I need paper and a pencil." Jonathan rolled into his office, surrounded by glass screens and silent machines. Naomi ignored all of it, sat on the floor, and began to draw. Symbols, lines, a web-like shape forming slowly. When she finished, she slid the paper toward him. "Stare at it," she said. "Don't talk, don't move. Just look." "For how long?" "1 hour." She left. Jonathan laughed once, softly, bitterly. This was madness, but he stared. Minutes passed, then more. Anger, shame, then something else. Patterns, connections. His mind, so long trapped in despair, began to hum. When Naomi returned, she didn't ask if he believed. "Tomorrow," she said, "we remove the chair." Jonathan's breath caught. "That's impossible." She met his eyes. "So was listening to me." She turned and walked away. Jonathan sat alone in the quiet, heart pounding. Not with fear, but with something he hadn't felt in months. The terrifying, fragile beginning of possibility. And for the first time since the accident, he wasn't sure whether the world had broken him or whether he had finally been challenged in the only way that mattered. Do you believe a child can see truths adults refuse to face? Yes or no? Your answer might say more than you think. Jonathan didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the paper Naomi had drawn on. Lines spreading outward. A web without a center. No beginning. No end. It irritated him, fascinated him, haunted him. At 6 a.m., he rolled himself to the window. Chicago was waking up. Sirens in the distance, buses groaning, people already rushing somewhere important. A city that didn't pause for broken men. At exactly 8, Mark Ellison arrived, looking tense. "Jonathan," he said carefully, "the board is asking questions. You canceled everything. No explanation." Jonathan didn't turn around. "Tell them I'm unavailable." "For how long?" Jonathan finally looked at him. "As long as it takes." Mark hesitated. "Is this about the girl?" "She has a name." Mark swallowed. "Jonathan, she's a child, a black child. If this goes public..." "There it is," Jonathan cut in sharply. "That's the part you're afraid of." Mark's face flushed. "I'm trying to protect you." "No," Jonathan said. "You're trying to protect the image." Before Mark could respond, the front door opened. Naomi Brooks walked in like she belonged there. She wore the same hoodie, same calm expression, but today something in her eyes had sharpened, like she knew this would be harder. "You're late," Mark snapped before Jonathan could speak. "You can't just walk into—" "Mark," Jonathan said quietly, "leave us." Mark stared at him, stunned. "You're serious?" "Yes." When Mark left, Naomi turned to Jonathan. "You almost quit already." "I didn't," Jonathan said. "You thought about it." Jonathan didn't deny it. She nodded, as if that was expected. "Second lesson," she said. "This one hurts. Everything already hurts. Not like this." She walked to his wheelchair and placed her hand on the armrest. "Get up." Jonathan's stomach dropped. "No," he said immediately. "That's not how this works." "That's exactly how it works. I can't feel my legs." "That's because you stopped asking them to answer." Jonathan laughed, sharp and defensive. "Do you hear yourself?" Naomi didn't flinch. "Do you hear everyone else?" He followed her gaze toward the wall of glass, the city beyond it. "They decided who you were the moment they saw the chair," she said. "Just like they decided who I was the moment they saw my skin." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "You think this is the same?" "No," Naomi said, "but it rhymes." The words landed heavier than he expected. Daniel Moore appeared at the doorway, uncertainty written across his face. "Sir?" Jonathan took a breath, a long one. "Help me down," he said. Daniel hesitated. "Jonathan, that's an order." Strong arms lifted him. The moment his body left the chair, panic surged. The floor felt impossibly far away. When Daniel laid him down, Jonathan's chest burned like he was drowning. Naomi crouched beside him. "Don't fight the fear," she said. "Use it." "I can't move," Jonathan said through clenched teeth. "You're not supposed to walk," she said. "You're supposed to crawl." The word hit him like a slap. "Absolutely not." Naomi stood. "Then we're done." She turned toward the door. "Wait," Jonathan said. His voice cracked. Naomi stopped. "You want to know what they see when they look at me?" she asked softly. "A problem, a risk, something to control or remove." Jonathan stared at the floor. "They see the chair first," she continued. "Before they see you, before they hear you. That's how power works. It teaches you who's allowed to stand." Silence filled the room. "Crawl," she said. Jonathan planted his palms against the hardwood floor. His arms shook. Sweat poured down his spine. He tried to lift himself and collapsed. Pain exploded in his shoulders. Humiliation burned hotter. Again. He dragged himself forward an inch, then another. His legs were dead weight, useless, mocking. Tears blurred his vision. This was worse than surgery, worse than doctors shaking their heads. This was stripping away dignity. Naomi didn't help. She didn't comfort him. She watched. "You built empires," she said calmly. "Now build yourself." Jonathan gritted his teeth and pulled again. His breath came in ragged gas. Each movement felt like betrayal of who he used to be. When he finally stopped, collapsed on the floor, he sobbed, not quietly, openly. Daniel turned away, jaw tight. Naomi knelt beside Jonathan, close enough that he could hear her breathing. "Good," she said. "What kind of monster says that?" Jonathan rasped. "The kind that knows this is the last time you'll feel this small." She placed a hand on his back, firm, grounding. "Stand." "I can't." "Try." He pushed, fell, pushed again. His arms screamed. His legs burned with phantom pain. "Think about what you want," Naomi said, "not what you lost." Jonathan squeezed his eyes shut. He saw himself walking into a room without pity following him. He saw himself being seen again, not as broken, not as untouchable. Slowly, impossibly, his knees tucked under him. He froze. Naomi smiled, not wide, not proud, just certain. "There," she said, "your body remembers." Jonathan stood for half a second, then he fell. But that half second changed everything. The next days blurred together, crawling, standing, falling, rising. Naomi pushed harder, removed the wheelchair from the room, left it outside like a discarded lie. Jonathan hated her some days, loved her others, and through it all, the world outside pressed closer. A neighbor complained. Security asked questions. Someone filmed Naomi entering the estate and posted it online. Why is a billionaire letting a black kid run his house? The comments were worse. She's scamming him. Of course he's guilty about something. White savior nonsense. Where are her parents? Jonathan read every word, each one cut. But Naomi never asked him to defend her. Instead, she said, "This is the lesson you don't get to skip." By the end of the week, Jonathan walked 3 steps. 3, on shaking legs, barely upright, but real. Daniel watched with his mouth open. Mark stood frozen in the doorway, fear and disbelief colliding on his face. "This can't be real," Mark whispered. Naomi looked at him. "It is. You just don't want it to be." Jonathan stood there, trembling, sweat-soaked, alive in a way he hadn't been since the crash. But the higher he climbed, the louder the world pushed back. And Jonathan knew, this wasn't just about walking anymore. It was about choosing who he would stand with when everything was watching. And that choice was going to cost him far more than his pride. The morning Jonathan walked without help, the house felt different. Not louder, not brighter, honest. He stood at the edge of the terrace at Hale Estate, the wheelchair untouched behind him. The city stretched out beyond the trees, restless and impatient. For the first time since the accident, Jonathan didn't feel like it was leaving him behind. He felt like he was meeting it again, on equal ground. Naomi Brooks stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching him like a coach who already knew the outcome. "You're not done," she said. Jonathan smiled faintly. "I know." News vans lined the street by noon. Someone had leaked everything. The canceled meetings, the girl living in his house, the wheelchair left unused. Headlines screamed speculation. Pundits argued. Comment sections turned cruel. Billionaire manipulated by child white guilt or mental breakdown? Where are her parents? Jonathan read none of it. He invited them all in. The press conference wasn't held in a boardroom. It was held in the garden. Jonathan walked to the podium alone. No crutches, no chair. Gasps rippled through the crowd. He waited for the noise to settle. "I was told I'd never walk again," he began, "by people with titles, degrees, and billion-dollar equipment." He paused, then gestured toward Naomi, who stood calmly beside Ruth Brooks, her mother, quiet, dignified, unflinching. "I was helped by a 10-year-old black girl who asked for leftovers instead of money." A murmur spread. Jonathan's voice didn't waver. "That fact seems to make people uncomfortable." He looked straight into the cameras. "It should." Questions exploded. Accusations followed. "Is this exploitation? Are you using her for a redemption story? Why trust a child?" Jonathan raised a hand. "Because the world taught me to ignore people like her," he said, "and that nearly killed me." Silence fell. Ruth stepped forward then, not seeking permission, not asking for space. She simply spoke. "My daughter doesn't heal bodies," she said. "She reminds people who they are when the world tells them who they aren't." A reporter scoffed. "That sounds like pseudoscience." Ruth met his gaze. So did believing black children could lead. That night, Jonathan walked Naomi home, not to a mansion, not to a charity shelter, but to a modest brick house on the south side of Chicago. Neighbors watched from porches. Some nodded, some stared. Naomi didn't shrink. She never had. Inside, Jonathan met Ruth properly. No titles, no contracts, just conversation. "I want to help," Jonathan said, "but not by owning this." Ruth smiled. "Good." Together they built something new. Not a clinic, not a brand, a place. The Pathway Center opened quietly in Oregon. No glossy ads, no VIP donors. People didn't come to be cured. They came to be seen. The price of entry wasn't money, it was commitment. Each person brought something they valued: time, effort, food for shelters, care for others. Naomi insisted on it. "People heal better when they give," she said. Jonathan watched men twice Naomi's size cry on the floor, crawl, stand, fall, and rise again. He watched women regain strength after years of being told their pain was imaginary. He watched veterans learn to breathe without fear, and he walked among them, not as a savior, but as proof. Years passed. The Pathway Center spread, not fast, but faithfully. Ruth trained mentors. Naomi grew. Not into a symbol, but into a leader who refused one. "Don't put me on a pedestal," she told audiences. "Build a ramp." Jonathan sold most of his company. He funded scholarships, not speeches. He stood beside Naomi when she testified before city councils about access, dignity, and who gets believed. One evening, Jonathan visited a rescue shelter. He found Naomi there, older now, kneeling beside a blind dog, whispering encouragement. He smiled. Some systems don't need reinvention. They need respect. Jonathan never forgot the chair. He kept it, not as a reminder of loss, but of learning who taught him how to stand. And when people asked him what healed him, he answered simply, "A child the world told me to ignore." Before we say goodbye, let me ask you, how did this story make you feel? Do you believe listening can be an act of justice? Yes or no? Do you think real change begins when power learns to be quiet? Yes or no? If this story moved you, comment 111 below. Tell us which country you're watching from. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, please share this video.